Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Von Dienerbell game review. Before I even begin, this will be a perspective that's different. My previous reviews were 100% completion reviews with full coverage, but this one is only about 25 hours of gameplay. Let's call it an early to middle game look, but my reason for not completing this game in full will be very apparent and noted. So with that little disclaimer, let's get into it. Today I'm going to be talking about Pacific Drive, a game developed by Ironwood Studios and published by Kepler Interactive, where you drive what amounts to be a demon station wagon around the Pacific Northwest that got wrecked in a looter builder style game. I actually lost all my footage into the abyss somehow, so this is going to be an interesting session as I try to recreate some of this. As usual, I'll give a shorthand of the story with what I managed to get to. This won't take long. You are driving around delivering pizza or something, it gets sucked into a wormhole. You pop out into desolation and run into a new set of wheels. You take your new ride out for a spin, where you're guided by a pair of guys who could be your morning radio talk show hosts to a conveniently placed auto body garage. You very early on figure out this car is a thing called a remnant and takes over your body as you get hyper clinging to it until you die, so that's cool. And the rest of your story is you trying to find the means to break the link and escape and cure the problem that's been plaguing the area forever, and all these brainy people never figured out until you just showed up in a beat up dune buggy. Yep, that about covers it. The world this story plays out in starts out looking great, and you get into the drive and routine of breaking into various buildings and destroying old vehicles for materials. The issue is the maps very quickly start looking the same. You got bumpy roads, trees, and literally every structure is a carbon copy clone of all the other structures in other locations. We have small wooden shacks, we got mobile homes, we've got small radio towers, and the occasional gas station for obvious reasons. The only real bad part here is they all look the same with about 2 tile sets each. At first, I played it off as, okay, the opening zones just didn't go hard on variety, although I would argue this is where a game should be trying to hook you the most. But it becomes a very sharp stick to the eye when you get to your third or fourth biome out from the base, and it's all the same. I will admit to not seeing past a fourth out biome, but due to the nature of the gameplay, which I'll get to in just a bit, that was enough to just make the call that this world becomes a very bland place. Especially when they operate with the expectation that you'll be farming for parts. A lot in every biome. The soundtrack is a very quick topic. There isn't. Really, it's okay, and I'm not going to rip on the decision. Not every game has to have music, and I do feel like the way this game delivers music optionally is pretty clever. You are driving a car. Cars have radios. You could turn on and off your car radio to listen to a music track and even pretend to change radio channels, although sadly they all have the same music scores, just in a different rotation. I know I actually thought the songs were awesome, but I know my chat at the time hated me turning on the radio, so you can't win them all. I am calling this a missed opportunity for them to have done a country music rotation, rock, hip hop, etc. on a few different channels. I'm actually kind of curious what you all have to say in the comments about what your favorite tracks were, or if you're in the camp of disliking it altogether. Otherwise, with it turned off, there was a general silence with the exception of your tools and some ambient car and environmental noises. Operating your scrapper, power hammer, robbery-inducing crowbar prize, etc. is simple and to the point, but acceptable. Now for the rabbit hole, which is the gameplay loop. First off, have a merry good time figuring it all out. The tutorials early on are a mess of menus. There is hand-holding, then there is Pacific Drive. I'll go ahead and call myself stupid, but no lie, it took me about 20 minutes just to figure out how to open my first escape portal on the first mission tutorial, and nothing else was fast either. I wish I still had that footage because it was a hilarious mess of me being stuck in the woods. You go on a joyride, you wreck things, rob houses, and generally shove everything you can into cardboard boxes. This amounts to 13 different lootable items used for crafting. These 13 items are collected immediately at the start of the game and never change throughout the entire game, so get used to seeing them and don't expect any kind of endgame improvements here. In addition to crafting items, you're also going after radioactive orbs you carry around in your hands and shove in the passenger seat of your car, like so. There's nothing unusual about this at all. You use this energy for two purposes: to open up oh crap portals, to escape in case of emergencies, or to unlock blueprint upgrades for your car. This energy comes in three flavors, with the better energy in the end game to at least give something to strive for later on. After talking about game loops, I usually talk about combat, but there is nothing here. Nada. You have a car and you can run through a tree. There are a handful of enemies in the form of flying tow trucks that latch onto you or your car and fling you around, and exploding crash test dummies that seem to sprint out of the air when you make a turn, like that deer that jumps in front of you at 6 a.m. Other enemies that cause you hurt are radiation clouds, electrical storms, a hurricane or windstorms, killer attack rabbits, and a You're Dead Zone collapse timer, among many others. There are a pretty good number of different anomaly encounters you'll run into, so that does keep some things fresh, but during my runs, they, for the most part, all were dealt with just by navigating your car or yourself around them. Since you are going to spend 60% of your game around your car, let's talk about it. Your very Knight Rider-ish looking car has all kinds of tech in it while being a rusted beater on the outside. You have your standard window wipers, a secondary lock emergency brake, a car radio mentioned earlier, also equipped with a cute little compass ball, and a gas speed meter, battery operators, all the stuff you normally see in your car. You do have open space in your back seat, so it's a perfect small family car so long as no one calls shotgun, because there's a gigantic computer there. You also do get a few different power-ups you can equip your car with, but like an emergency speed gun, but you never used them much, so I can't go into too much conversation about how these all played out. There is a fairly simple research system with fairly basic requirements, mostly locked around the three energy types you can gather. This is where the true grinding begins, but not ends, because you have to keep going out into the later zones over and over to gather up the limited energy nodes to power these. The crafting system itself is passable, but another little annoyance is you have to click and hold a button while it takes a few seconds for every creation. There are 13 different tabs, at least for different kinds of parts, making more clicking around for a system that you'll be interacting with a whole lot. One really nice feature that they did put in here though is that you can craft the prerequisites for a material directly from the main menu, thus letting you not have to scroll through everything to make it. This car play style was kind of fun at first, but the pace of play is so very slow for what you expect from a car drive. Have you ever wondered what it's like to off-road in an AMZ Gremlin or really any small compact car? Even with off-roading tires and equipment, if you touch grass with your car, expect to spin around and have a bad time. Controlling it requires going 5 miles per hour while tapping your brake, never mind bumps or high wind. Your demon buddy actually does have the ability to get going to 100 miles per hour, but good luck with that. They even have an achievement for getting to 88 because you just can't find that kind of run speed. You're constantly tapping the brake just to navigate the sheer obnoxious amount of junk that they throw at you every 50 feet. You drive for 5 seconds and have to get around some broken down cars. Another 50 feet is a radiation pocket. After that, there are more cars, then a bunch of exploding crash dummies, etc., etc. This could be someone's jam for the speed of a run, but man, did it feel like a huge slog to me. Doubling down on how slow a run really feels is that they put a game over timer in many of the zones that if you spend a random feeling amount of time in the zone, it will collapse into a void of death, which you may as well click game over on because good luck navigating through it. In practice, you can manipulate this a little bit in what you do inside the zone, but the base timer it starts at is indeed random, and they don't give you any indicator other than an air horn very shortly before it happens, which is usually far too late. The zone turns into a visual storm that could be equated to a disco club with about 20 disco balls and 100 laser lights. I don't mind having the constant damage spurring you to escape via a portal or zone marker, but I positively hate visual impairment being a difficulty slider. There's nothing fun or challenging about just turning off your ability to see. Speaking of, their nighttime perpetual darkness zones you get half the time also can go to the dumpster. My clips at the start were in one of these zones, and outside the light of the building, you can't even see a rock you are walking directly into on foot without a glow stick, where the only means of knowing you're even stuck is that your mini-map doesn't move. Heck, even your headlights on your car barely give you vision a few seconds ahead of you, even with the second and third set of headlights. It's just a terribly unfun impairment to have to play with. Not many like the perpetual darkness mechanics in Diablo or any other games that featured it, and it's equally as terrible here. I just talked about the game over zone collapse timer, which leads directly into what made me stop the game run where I did and why I did not release this video earlier. I wanted to see if the developers would address any of these issues and bugs, so I gave them some time. I ran into a two-part bug after dying to one of these zone stability game overs. The first bug was at the dumpster next to the garage, whose intention is to spit out repair parts for your car so you don't have to spend everything you make to patch it up, which is a very good idea, by the way. Just vomited out one part times 40. The developers addressed this, so let's put that off the table now. It's just something that happened. The second part was every single repair piece I was getting started just vanishing off of my car after installing. This left my vehicle as a broken husk with no materials to repair it, pretty much resetting my game back to square one of farming everything all over to get back to a decent shape. I'm sorry, but there wasn't enough compelling gameplay for me to spend the several hours it would take to do that all over again. This was not directly called out in the last patch, but it seems to have been linked to the parts issue listed above, as I have not been able to duplicate it since, so big thumbs up to the developers to fix this. But in exchange, the dumpster diving seems to give less parts in general, so it still can feel like you're constantly taking 2 steps forward and 3 steps back on any run that doesn't go well, even if you turn off all the penalties in the game. The second thing that is kind of a turnoff is the no save features mid-run. These runs can take hours to do, and I'm not even kidding. Just one 3-zone trip I did inadvertently set up a 2 hours of gameplay at least. They did say the game has an autosave function in between each zone you travel to in the middle of a run, but the exploring you do takes so much time that becomes a little unhelpful. The campaign missions I was working on was very long, and I was only halfway there. Getting to the later zones I imagine would take quite a bit of individual playtime just driving to it. I usually enjoy playing games on a harder difficulty slider, which in Pacific Drive consists of what you lose if you abandon a run or blow up, but this is one game I would definitely recommend turning off all negative conditions if you ever want to make any progress. Pacific Drive is no bite-sized log on to play in your free time purchase. Even the escape portals you create if you want to end a run for some reason is forced to be put at least 6 minutes away from you, so you can't access it quickly even if you happen to be in the area of one. Heck, it's almost worse if you are, since the game literally doesn't even let you open a portal if you are inside the summon circle, making you drive the 6 minutes away from it, then open it, and then drive back with the exit points sometimes even being clustered right next to each other so their opening areas overlap. Speaking of fixing your car, the garage and car creation feels pretty good, but it's also very slow feeling. The actual garage with a fuel tank, system scanner, a medical kit, that all feels great. But the limited inventory space and pretty clunky controls makes you spend way more time in the garage than you need to. If you look, you can only create one part at a time, and then you can come over here and you can install the one part, and then you have to go back and do it all over again. Now multiply that by 25 times for each individual part that you have damaged, and a full garage repair can take 20 to 30 minutes by itself, just clicking and installing. I find the Steam achievements for completion to be somewhat telling of this game's play. If we look here, 10% of players have dropped out after the tutorial and before the first mission. 25% of players are out before even completing the first mission. 45% of players are gone by the second mission, and 60% by the third mission is where I ran into my car wrecked bug. Looking further, only about 9% of players have stuck it out to the very end for as long as it's been out. Maybe these numbers don't mean anything, but combined with a player count that has plummeted, it really doesn't bode well overall. This isn't an action Souls game with a difficulty bar that holds people back. This game just tests your patience and will to actually just spend the time on pretty much emptiness and repetitive motions. I want to repeat that this review and ranking is based off about 25 hours of gameplay and getting a little over halfway through the actual story campaign of the game, I believe. It feels like enough time for the game to hit on what you're going to get into. The first 8 hours or so will feel great, but the stagnation hasn't really hit in at that point. The hours spent to actually do this whole game, though, will bloat a lot going past my point. Excuse me, as the farming amount will scale massively with it. Your playtime for the campaign can roughly be 20 to 25 hours, with about 40 or so hours for a complete 100% run through for a $30 game. So it's not a gigantic hit to your wallet, but even so, the investment of time is pretty low, with a lot of what it does have sunk into a repeated farm loop. I had a personal rating for this in my head with the bugs I encountered, but with those being fixed, I'll endeavor to be a bit more fair. I believe this to be a D plus to a C minus game. If you're the type of person who loves these pretty carefree games, maybe a C plus at the very best. Even bug free, this game still moves very slowly with very few hooks, an unnecessarily slow interface, and a difficulty factor that predominantly is centered around unrealistic vision impairment and game slowing obstacles, which mostly consists of steer cars slowly around said obstacle. Mix that with a mind-numbing amount of repetitiveness with a little break in the routine, and I feel like this game has no great middle ground. You're either going to find most people rating this game 8 to 10s or 1 to 3s, I believe. This is my first relatively negative review I've given so far, and it kind of feels bad since I want games to be good and want everything to be great. I don't want anything to fail. This is the kind of game you can find some value in, but likely at a catch Steam sale value, and only if you adore this style. Either way, let me know down below if you think I'm being pretty fair or if I'm just being a big meanie. As usual, you can catch me on Twitch streaming live on Von Dienerbell or whatever games I'm working on. Hello, Draken's Dogma 2. And please consider like or following, etc. for more reviews. Until next time though, dinner's done.